All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to the last session of the cohort, which is probably the thing that built my personal brand, storytelling. It is the most profitable skill you could learn this 2023, and I am not exaggerating. If it wasn't for my stories, I don't think any of you would be here in this cohort with me today. So I'm going to show you exactly how I tell my stories and why it's not as complicated as it seems. So my favorite quote, and you saw it in module 1, the most unique part about you will always be your story. And it's so true. Whenever someone wants to remember you for something, it will be your story. When you think about your friends, you think about what's happened to them, what they've been through, memories that you have with them. It's not about their skills. It's not about what they've done. It's about what they're saying and how they're saying they've done it, more like. So there's like this, my favorite quote is like, we are the stories we tell ourselves. So it's also correlated with that. The first module and this one really do tie in together because we go from creating our own stories to actually telling them. Now, what story? So there's 3 types of stories you can use: transformations, personal, and struggle. So for transformations, there's 2 that I really like to use. It's before and afters and rags to riches. Second, personal, so flaws and humor. And then third one, struggles, relationships, and life. All of these I've used, and all of them you're able to use at some extent. So whatever you feel like you can share, it's fine. So my before and after for me and you could be like, last year I was unemployed, today I am working for myself. Last year I was working at a job I didn't like, today I'm working at a job I really like. It doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be like, yesterday I lost 50 kilos, here's how I did it. No, it can be simple things because people they want to relate to those simple things that they aren't doing, like going for a run. If I say I went for a 3-kilometer run because I'm trying to improve my mental health, that is relatable. I'm not running a marathon, but I'm doing something that someone else wants to do. Hence why people then want to be associated with you, because they want to do that small thing that they're not doing. The rags to riches is the same thing. You start talking about, it doesn't have to be a rags to riches. I just call it that because that's just the general name for it. But it can be like, I was earning $5 a month, now I'm earning 20 like dollars per hour. Here's how I did it. Simple things like that do make an impact. So every single story that you have, or like every single thing that you do in a weekly basis, just collect it and be like, how can I make an impact to myself 6 months ago? Like every single month we're improving ourselves to the point that you're making your 6 months ago self proud. So share that story. Same with personal. So flaws and humor, you can use that in the comment section where you talk about, you share memes like Luke and I do. You share flaws like I did today on my post, stuff like that. It does really make a difference. So the storytelling club rules. Rule number 1 of the storytelling club: you don't go into unnecessary tangents. The reason why a lot of storytellers fail on LinkedIn is because they do this a lot. The reason for this is because we've been taught by education so long in English lessons that we have to write long stories for them to actually hit. We read books, we've seen films, they all have very long action points. They all have this long introductions. And here's why storytelling doesn't work as well as it should on LinkedIn. Because on LinkedIn, you have a specific amount of time to retain someone's attention. So don't go into unnecessary tangents, or what I would call them fluff. If you start telling me about the backstory of one of the characters in your story, whether that's you or someone else, people will get bored because there's not enough in it for them. When people are watching a movie or reading a book, they're already prepared to know all of those things because they want to. They literally paid for that book to read. So they want to know everything there is to be for that person. With you, in your social media journey, it's not quite the same until you build that community that does want to know. Remember, it's free stuff. When people aren't paying, the interest isn't as high. So keep your content snappy and don't go into unnecessary tangents. Always have a goal. So I have 4 questions that I always ask before I write the story. How do I want my audience to relate to it? Do I want my audience to buy from it? Do I want them to subscribe? Do I want to inspire them? So create a collection of questions that you have to ask yourself on how you want your audience to feel. I go a lot with feeling, not with action. Like, do I want them, if I want someone to buy from me, I need to inspire them, not sell them. If I want someone to follow them, I need to follow me. I need to educate them, not sell to them, not give them information that they won't need. I give it to them right away. So it's the same. What is your goal? Reverse engineer the emotion and then create from that. That is my biggest secret when it comes to storytelling. It's not the action, it's the emotion. So knowing your focus helps you know how to frame your story. So here's one story I wrote recently. The goal, inspired by being relatable. So 2 years ago, I made a decision that changed my life. Every single person in this room, you're all in different niches, you're all in different age brackets, you're all in different parts of the world. But in the statement, I made a decision that changed my life. You're all interested and you sort of relate because at some point, all of you have made a decision that changed your life, big or small. Maybe you went vegan, maybe you ran a marathon, maybe you moved away to another country. Any decision change, like of such extent, change your life. Then the second thing, I go for connection points. I talk a lot about this because it's so important when you're telling a story. You're connecting with the audience. You're like mimicking. It's like a mirror. That's the point of storytelling. Is people want to see themselves in the content they read, and the more they see themselves in you, the more they're going to like you. Again, influenced by Robert Cialdini. You kind of learn how to do that naturally through storytelling. So similar emotions to your audience. So when I try to go for broad reach and it's like cold, like December, I know there's a lot of negative self-talk. I didn't want to make my bed. I got rejected. We've all been through that. So when I touch on those points, I am ensuring that I'm connecting with my audience. And then the desired action, what is it? I want them to feel motivated. So be better or stay bitter. That's just a good quote for me to use. And it's memorable. It's a good, like, going back to the hook type of vibe, and it inspires them. So that's what I'm leaving them with, inspiration. So a specific goal in mind also prevents you from going into unnecessary tangents. So again, if you keep on finding yourself telling stories too long that they don't even fit in the word count of LinkedIn, remember the goal. What am I doing here? What's the desired action? And what am I teaching? At the end of the day, we're all teaching something, whether you want, like, you're doing specifically or not. You're teaching someone how to tell a story, how to do something, or how to just be a human in this world where everybody expects us to be perfect. People like stories because of that, because you're sharing how you're living as an entrepreneur, business owner, unemployed person, whatever you are. People just want to know how other people do things. So my rule number 3, a scroll stopping hook. This, as in all posts, but especially stories, will give you the upper hand, because when people feel like they're about to get into something like a TikTok video or a YouTube video where like they're like having to stop and see what's up, then they're going to read the whole thing. So I wrote my first LinkedIn post 10 months ago. It's short, it's specific, it tells you the story, it intrigues the reader. So why does this work and how it kind of work for you? I wrote my first LinkedIn post 10 months ago. I'm giving them a timeline, which is incredibly important. And if you analyze a lot of best performing posts, you'll see there's always a number. It just makes people feel like it makes you more credible. Firstly, you're also giving them a timeline, which makes them like it helps you not need to over explain where you're going. In a story, you'll probably go 10 months ago, in the year of 2023, I was doing X, Y, and Z, I was struggling and blah, blah, blah. So just saying 10 months ago helps you reduce that long explanation to 3 simple words. That's it. I wrote my first LinkedIn post 10 months ago. So, I was somewhere and now I'm here because I said 10 months ago. So you see that, like, the importance. I'm not always using those hooks because of nothing. It just makes a lot of sense. So learn from the best as well. They always use these. So Dina, my boyfriend hit me yesterday. He busted my lip and nearly chipped my tooth. So this post actually went incredibly viral. It got like 4,000 likes for a text post. You definitely stop the scroll right here. Then with Matt, 3 years ago, I was single, 28 pounds overweight, and lived in a 6-bed house share in London. You're curious, you want to keep on reading the story because you're invested already. There's so many like little bullet points that catch your eye. Jasmine, they told me LinkedIn isn't worth it. So instead of saying, when I was in middle school, I used to be bullied because I was a janitor and people told me that it wasn't worth it to go into LinkedIn. He just simply said what happened and people can assume the rest. The law of it, like, it's not a law, but just knowing that your audience is smart enough to assume things about what you're saying is a key thing. And then if you're not sure that they're not understanding, you'll see in the comments if they didn't understand the point. And then if you want to make sure that your point is clear, you can also specify parts of the story in the comment section, but never sacrifice the hook for the sake of making sure that that one person understands your point. Everyone's smart now. Like people, like your reader will be able to, understand what you're saying. So rule number 4, avoid long back stories. So no one has time to read them. They're often unnecessary. They really can assume the setting and you get to the point quicker. The goal with content is to get readers from point A to B as quickly as possible. Always think about A to V. If you're like writing a post, a story, or anything, just look at it and be like, am I going from A to B as quick as possible? If not, rewrite. Always. Rule of thumb. So I rewrote one of my posts from last week, which is completely different. So if I was telling a story like I would a book or even in a podcast or even talking to you guys, I would actually go and say, when I was 15, I watched The Social Network for the first time. It was a fantastic film by David Fincher. If it told the story of not Mark Zuckerberg and how he built Facebook, I felt emotionally connected to it as it mirrored a lot of my university experience, blah, 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 blah. Do you see how I probably already lost 20 of you me reading this? It's because of that. Even though I'm giving them enough context, it's not too long. It's already too long for someone's attention span. Like, they don't care. It's all about me. What about them? So then the way you correct it is you touch on a point that everybody else will relate to. I used to think entrepreneurship was lame. You either agree with my statement, you disagree with my statement, or you just want to know why I thought that. Then the next line, but building a business and studying felt like a game. So I went in for that because I wanted to clarify that this post was going to be about me studying and being a business owner. And then I gave them like the journey instead of being like, oh, I used to study so much and I would always have like these like long nights at school when I was drinking a lot of coffee and I was trying to pass my grades. I just made it into bullet points quickly, snappy. Like I said on my copyrighted lesson, there needs to be rhythm. The quickest way to do rhythm is to abbreviate words and make them just go from point A to B, A to B, A to B every single time. Then you can add as much context as you can. Just make sure it's not too long. And then you give people a reason to relate back. So the best parts, I got to building in public. So someone was talking about building in public earlier. So that person that read that is going to love that because they're going to relate to it immediately because they're doing the exact same thing. So I'm not only touching on the point of entrepreneurship being lame, but I'm also touching on like a variety of the different points. That ensures that my post gets seen for as many people as possible because I'm touching on so many points that are related lightly, but psychologically people will enjoy it because they're like, oh my God, that line, so relatable. The amount of times people send me individual lines, either on the comment section or DMs about content they related to, it wasn't just the entire content, it's almost always just a single line. So make sure you're using as many cards in your pocket deck as possible, as long as they're related. So that's what I would do. And the last thing that makes this better than this is also, it's also the visual storytelling, which I'll get into in a minute. So that visual allowed me to catch the reader before they even read the entire post, because they see the big logo or whatever it is, and they immediately want to know more. And then the hook ensures me that they stay and read more. So here I broke down the storytelling in this, which I'll get into in a minute. So I start with a bold opinion, then the unfolding of the story, which is the climax for those storytellers and copywriters here. I already know that. And then there's the aha moment, which is the next step. So what's going on after? And then the power ending. So in a film, you usually have a graph that goes like this. I'll show you guys in a minute. And it starts with the beginning, the middle, and the end, the most basic aspect of it. So in this, we start with something is called invertus res, which in medias res, which is you start in the middle of the story or with the opinion. That's what I do. I'll break it down in a minute. And then I go in with the climax. So you want to start with the climax as soon as you can, because people like that. They like the peak of the argument, the peak of the moment. So if someone's talking about getting divorced, you want to talk about the emotion that gave you. So, or what's happening. So like in the middle of it, not at the end or the start. The aha moment, it gives people a reason to feel good about what they just read. Again, the emotion that you're evoking onto your reader is incredibly important. And you should always think about it like that. Emotion, emotion, emotion. Because people won't always remember what you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. So keep that in mind. And then the power ending, it just makes you more memorable. They're like, if they're getting from point A to B, they're probably already forgot point A. But if you rephrase it in point B, they're more likely to like you and come back to your content. So visual storytelling. Always use visuals when telling a story. This is my rule of thumb. I personally, and you guys know, I hate photos so much, especially ones that just don't make sense in the content. But I do appreciate the art of it, because it, one, brings you more engagement, 100% proven many times. I've seen it with my clients, I see it with myself, I see it with others. With stories, if the story is special and you have a photo that accompanies it perfectly, please always use it. If you're talking about how horse riding changed your life because it made you feel a lot more relaxed, please use a photo of you in a horse. It just helps the feeling. Again, you're evoking an emotion, you're telling a story, you're watching a film, you're watching a trailer. Please always do it. So every single time I tell a story on LinkedIn, I use an image. It needs to be relevant, it needs to be high quality. There's one thing people forget. Sometimes even selfies aren't high quality enough to make it great. Again, back to the point of personal brand. What emotion is your personal brand evoking? Is it classy? Is it luxurious? Is it professional? For me, what I've been trying to do is I want to do more high-end luxury, very reserved type. So my photos usually reflect that. It's not by accident. I carefully conducted it. I didn't just have photos of me doing X, Y, and Z. I went and took them on purpose. I changed my whole wardrobe for it because I wanted to embody the highest version of myself for this specific purpose. Again, back to module 1, you're becoming the niche and you're becoming who you want to be. And visual storytelling is a way to kind of speed up that process, because the more you're trying to be it, you become it. So storytelling is so special, because in those stories that you're telling, you're becoming them as well. So yeah, before I get to woo-woo, that's it. It helps the reader get more context visually and no extra words needed. So in this post, I'm a Meta, so I didn't really need to even say that I went to Meta. I slightly commented in the PS, but I didn't even need to say it because people could already assume that I was at Meta because they saw me there. So how not to use selfies. So, you know, it might not always be related. The selfie doesn't really make me feel anything. It's not really directly correlated to the story. So what you should do is, when you're telling a story, like here, today I'm 108 days sober. So he's happy because he's 108 days sober. So that makes more sense. And it creates more engagement because it's like the emotion that you're getting. Here, it's obviously to getting more engagement, and it works. But if you ask me, I prefer this one to this one. but you guys do you. Either picture works, but again. Okay, rule number 6, value add to your audience. So value isn't always how you get someone a client or how you're making more profit. Value also comes in the way of entertainment, empowerment, inspiration, and education. You're not always needing to make people money to make them feel like you're a valuable add to their life. Like, I may not always give you money, but I give you entertainment, I give you education, I make you feel inspired. So for those that are always doing call to action posts or sales posts, think about this. You're social media, it's social media for a reason. Like, LinkedIn is part of like a social media platform. So people are there to be entertained, educated, and inspired. The more pillars you collect, the bigger and better your platform, like your personal profile, becomes, because you're leveraging every single pillar that you can use. So if you're only doing educational content, try and do more inspirational and entertaining content and see how much your personal page changes, because there's more variety. It's like a restaurant. People prefer to go to restaurants that have more options just because there's more options, and they have, like, if they're feeling like this or that, or like they fancy this or that, there's options, and there's something for everyone. So last thing I wanted to cover, my unconventional formula to storytelling besides following the vibes. So by this point, you already know a lot of the things I do have absolutely no strategy, and I just go with the flow, which is a great way to be a marketer, and even a greater way to create a cohort from scratch. It made my life so easy that I had no systems prior to this. What I did put in my head. So I asked myself, how do I create stories? We've seen Jasmine's storytelling framework, and when I saw it, I was like, okay, I don't have that. I just have my brain. So in my best way to explain it to you, I'm gonna explain to you how my brain works. So we start off with a simple storytelling diagram. If you look on Google storytelling diagrams, this is what you come up with. You start with the start, middle, and end. So you start with the plot, then the climax, then the resolution. That's the typical story. So when you think about your story, it's usually like that. Like, where's the start, where's the middle, and where's the end? That's it. And it's super easy to tell. But the reason why I don't usually use this is because it's kind of boring and it won't get people hooked. So the next thing I discovered is called in medias res. What does this mean? In the middle of things. So essentially refers to a plot where they start from the middle. So when the actual action is going to start. A few examples of this: The Wolf of Wall Street. The opening scene is them trading in the trading floor, and you're getting excited and you're like in it. Like, from second one, you're hooked because you're getting that emotion. The second example I could use is The Social Network, one of my favorite movies. They start with him breaking up with his girlfriend. So you're already inside. You don't need any backstory. Like, no one explained who Mark was. No one explained who Jordan Belfort was. You just saw them in their element. In the context, it explained itself because you started from the middle. And this is what I kind of like always use in my stories without me actually meaning to. So, and then my method, I use the SLAY method. So story, lesson, actionable advice, and AU. Back to PS. Okay, so now I've given you 3 things that don't necessarily correlate to each other. And honestly, in my head, it looks like this. Like, it's all a combination of each. So the simplest way to explain this is start either with an emotion, start with the lesson, or start with the end. Okay, every single story starts with something like that, whether it's like, six months ago I was unemployed, 3 years ago I didn't want to do what I'm doing now, I think entrepreneurship is lame. All of them are creating something, either an emotion, lesson, or there's an ending to the story. So always try and start with that. Think about all of this, but only think about it. You don't have to use all of it. This is all like, this version of this might help me today. This version of that might help me today. I don't always use the SLAY method to tell a story. I don't always use in medias res. and I don't always use this graphic, but it helps create that version of my ideal story because I have the tools. It's up to me whether I want to use them all or none of them and start from scratch. But this is the most graphic and obvious way I can kind of explain how I tell stories. Here's a couple examples of story starters that kind of like use the emotion, lesson, or ending, or the immediate rest version. So Cody Sanchez, I have a friend who is 40 and damn near a billionaire. Blah, blah. 3 years ago, I escaped the rat race. And then Dakota, my parents struggled with crack addiction. I used to live in a motorhome as a kid. I was a college dropout. So he starts with the end, she starts with the facts, and I start with the emotion in a transformation. So a couple examples here. These are taken from the copywriting masterclass if you want to go back and look at them. And then my easiest way to learn how to tell a story, if you really still don't understand how, which is completely fine because I didn't understand how either, use the swipe file. The swipe file is your hack to learn how to do anything quickly. You have the results. All you have to do is reverse engineer how it can work for you. If you go to this part, there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of amazing hooks that performed well. There's a lot of like how people broke down their stories and why it worked. So all you have to do is go back to them and understand how they worked and why. So it's usually either because of the person, because of the hook, or just the initial emotion that it conveyed to someone. A lot of the times you probably see people going viral that have like 2K followers and you're like, why did they go viral? Like they got like 4K likes for no reason. It's usually because of one of those reasons. It's the emotion or anything else. So pull people into your world and share your story. So storytelling workshop time. I want to take this time for any of you to tell me something like a story that you wanted to start but don't know how. So this is your chance for me to actually write the start of your story. So without further ado, hands up. Thank you for listening. Amazing. I knew it. Sadia. So
I would love to see what you say about starting my how I met Robert and what I should say as a hook for that. Is it just 5 lessons I learned from Robert Cialdini or when I met him, or?
So tell me a little bit more about it.
So this was a national conference for real estate, and he was the keynote speaker. But I also had a speaking gig a little bit later. So we were not both on the stage at the same minute. But because I was also a speaker, we got to meet him, have a VIP luncheon, and all of that. So, yeah. So that was the occasion. I mean, some people like to say that I shared the stage or whatever, but technically we weren't both speaking at the same time. He was the keynote.
But you did share the stage with him because it was the same stage. So
correct. It was the same conference, same day, and all of that. And I was also in the main stage and all of that. Well, thank you, but
hell yeah, massive. Also,
so the organizer was a huge fan. Thank you.
Where was my invite? Like, hello.
We didn't meet last year. I wish I had met you and watched you grow. That would have been fun.
I'll invite me to the next one. Okay, so last year I got to speak next to Robert Cialdini. Last year I got to share the stage with Robert Cialdini, right? That's a good start. And then we were at the XXX Summit live event in Texas.
It's actually in Charlotte, North Carolina, but yes, cool.
Sorry, I will modify in my head.
Yeah. That's where I am. Perfect. Thank you.
So I just thought of a place. And then I would actually go in is like, here's 3 things I learned from him. Or do you want to talk about him or you?
Whatever is going to be most useful to people, right? If I talk about me, it sounds braggy. I don't know.
No,
or I guess what I learned from him. Okay. So the influence has influenced my life, and it was thrilling to meet him, right? So what did I learn from meeting him?
It was one of the best days of my life. Here's why. And then you could either break up the principles of influence and share your favorite ones, and say some key insights that he shared, but like in short bullet points. And then at the end, be like, I never thought I'd be in this place. Like 3 years ago, I never thought I'd be in this situation. Today, I'm able to create my own reality, something like that, something that relates to you. I'd probably be like, 3 years ago, this wasn't even a dream. Today, I'm able to do it because I've done this and this. And then be like, have you read Influence by Robert Cialdini?
I'm so glad this is being recorded. Thank you very much. I will go back
so
and
here
slowly.
it's fine. I would go back to the sleigh method. So you start with the story. So here's a story. Last year, I got to speak next to Robert Cialdini. We were like speaking at the summit. And then you go with the lesson. So the lesson is things that you learn from him, either the book or anything else. Then the actionable steps. So what is it that your audience is going to take from this? So are they going to learn the first principle of influence and how you apply it in that networking, like in that event, and then turn it back to them. So PS, have you read Influence? What other books do you like? Have you related to any of these principles? And then use that
Thank
photo.
you. Amazing, as always. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. I can't wait. Beverly.
Hey, Lara.
Hey.
Mine's about 8 weeks ago. I started your program. Didn't know anything about copywriting. 2 weeks ago, I met you. And that would never have happened if I hadn't done the program, if I hadn't stepped out of my comfort zone, and so on.
Yeah. I'm like a child. Okay. I don't know. I'll be slightly biased when I write this. So yeah, you got the hook right. Like 7 weeks in I've written something about 7 weeks ago. I joined Lara's cohort last week. I met her. And then something like it's done excellent. So if you want to say change, I'm not gonna say like change your life because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but something like an emotion, I always do that. So I do what I did and how it's helped me. So it's like it's changed my life, or it's made me tired. Like I'm struggling a lot, because then it like rehashes what the reader is like. It's priming the reader onto what they're about to read and how the emotion that they need to like tune themselves into.
Right.
And then you'll go into what else you want. Are you going to talk about what you learned?
What I learned, but also the fact of taking the step of stepping out of my comfort zone. So if I hadn't done the first one, we wouldn't have had the second one. There's a knock-on effect of here's an opportunity, do it, don't do it. I did it.
Yeah.
Struggled at first, but kept on with it. Then we ended up having coffee. That's
yeah, I think that stood out from our conversation was like you were like it was a sign, like you just had to do it. So like the best part, I got out of my comfort zone, I overcame imposter syndrome, I got my shit together, or like I got it, I fixed my problem. So always use like a question to continue on and then use bullet points. So if you were like the best part, I got my shit together, for example, not just like example, and then be like, I started posting on LinkedIn 3 times a week, I gained X amount of followers, I reached X amount of connections, I've made incredible networking decisions, and I've gotten X amount of leads or whatever. And then a final lesson like this wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't decided to bet on myself, or this wouldn't be possible if I hadn't decided to make an investment on my future self, on my personal brand. You can tie it back to personal branding.
Right.
And then say a couple 2 things like, and it's done this, and final remark on the cohort maybe, or tying it back to the 7 weeks. So seven things I didn't have 7 weeks ago, something like that.
Right. Because the other thing, of course, is I want to do it next week because we're doing the LinkedIn audio event. So
oh yeah,
like that's like the next thing that's happened.
Good promo. Yeah, and then you can plug it in the comments or in the PS.
Cool.
Ooh.
Thank
I have
you.
a couple ideas, but yeah, no, that's a good one. Another way you could do it. 7 weeks ago, I joined Lara's cohort. This week, I'm speaking on stage next to her. The best part, my personal brand has grown so much. The best part, I'm out of my comfort zone completely. The best part, my personal brand is the best it's been.
Yep. Yes, and yes, and yes. Thank you.
Okay, Stephanie. Stephanie Taylor. Okay, Harry.
Yo.
Yo.
I want to do one on the way I speak on podcasts. So I've hosted 35 podcasts. My first one was a lot worse than now. So I want to do a transformation post of the way I do podcasts and make it a bit of a lesson as well. Like, this is what I used to do, this is what I do now, which is a lot better. Like, make it into a bit of an educational thing. I've actually just started this now.
Something like that.
Mm.
Or like most people suck at podcasts. I was one of them. What else? I'm thinking.
I'm
Can you
thinking.
give me more? Can you give me more context?
Yeah. Basically, I used to literally put the topic into ChatGPT, get 10 questions in the form of Stephen Bartlett, make it concise, and then just ask them in order with a bit of follow-up, which is okay, but there's a lot better way to do it now, where I try to manually write 3 to 6 questions and just always try to tease out the actual insights for the topic we're talking about, and it's just a lot more conversational. It's a lot nicer. Used to be a lot more Q&A, now it's an actual conversation.
Okay, you guys, if you see this, I always kind of like always do this with my content. So I have the main emotions and key bullets that I want to make sure I have inside. So most people suck at podcasts. I was one of them. I started and then be like a year ago, I was using chat GPT to generate questions. Didn't know how to properly have a one-to-one conversation. Again, I'm assuming here, we're just making stuff up to explain.
It wasn't that aggressive, but I'm with you. I can have a conversation.
Sorry, I didn't. Okay, anyways. And something else. So like always make sure there's 3. So blah 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 blah. And then you go in with again part of the climax. So now today,
like 40 podcasts later.
yeah, that's good. So 40 podcasts later, and a lot of hours editing. So something funny. So you had the humor. That's what I would do, and a lot of tears, or like a mental breakdown. Then bullet point, like think you've done great. So like had amassed 8,000 views, listens. I don't know. Podcast got X amount of founders inside. So like I would say 6-figure, 7-figure founders, met my dream clients, made friends forever, and then go on and say something else.
Yeah, I can tie it back to the Callum one, which then led to like even more, like a little leadership event, which is a clear thing that just happened. Nice.
Good. So if you guys look at it, like they all follow the same Slay method. Like that's probably the best way to explain how I tell stories, and the easiest way. But also always relate back to that graph that I showed you, because it helps. Stephanie Taylor.
Thank you for being so specific.
I have 2 Stephanies wanting to the microphone, so
yeah. I wanted to include, I don't know how to relate it to real estate, that I started after getting separated 3 years ago. I started to throw myself in the lake every day, whether it was -17. I'd even like with a friend, I had an ice hack, and we would create circles in the ice, and we would get in there. And anyway, I've done it ever since. And so I wanted to but I didn't know how to create this story where I could include what I did, but it really had impact on my mental health. And I've got like a shit ton of mental health issues within my family, not me personally. So I wanted to talk about that and how it just like, whoo, really you're like an energizer bunny, you know, for the rest of the day. But I didn't know whether that was appropriate. It's just something I do daily. I stay in that water for 10 minutes every day in the winter.
So you want to talk about that? Like, is your question whether you should, or is it
Yeah,
that you
whether it's
want
even
to?
applicable.
So and I'm gonna say this quite bluntly and honestly, based on what I saw today with my post. I don't know if you guys saw it. I gave a single line about how my mental health took a hit. That's it. Nothing else. I wasn't over explaining how I was feeling. I didn't say I had a mental breakdown. I was dying. You know, I got a lot of lovely messages checking if I was okay. But to me, that's an indicator that perhaps I'm not coming in as strong as I would like to. And having people checking on me and having pity for me isn't what I was going for. So it's actually, for me, I've reminded that maybe I shouldn't always go for that route, because that's not the brand I'm going for. I'm going for strength. I'm going for authenticity. But if being authentic is going to compromise my strength, then I'm not going to do it. So even sometimes when we want to share the stories, remember how people think. And I don't want people thinking of me as someone that's struggling, because I'm not struggling. I may struggle, but I'm not struggling. So there's this fine line that I'm walking all the time, and so are you, when you're sharing stories like this, because you don't know if your ideal client is going to see that and going to be like, oh, she's struggling, so I might not do this. So right now, personally, I'm in that predicament where I don't know if it's actually helped my brand or not. So hopefully that maybe gives you some insight on how vulnerability works on social media, because as much as we'd like people to understand that that's just one part of our story, to some of them, it might be the whole thing, because they might not see your content ever again. So that's their first impression. So remember, if that piece of vulnerable content is the first impression someone gets of you, would you be happy with it? If the answer is yes, then absolutely share it. If it's really important to your cause, then absolutely share it. But vulnerability is really hard to sort of walk around.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe it can be phrased in a different way, but because it has so many other different benefits. But
Yeah, it does.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
No worries. Stephanie?
Unmute. I got a selfie out today. Thank you to you and Luke. I got a selfie out, but I'm still struggling to tell stories in my posts. And I've tried to do it this whole cohort. And in part because I'm writing for a B2B audience, not individuals. I'm writing for the corporate communications directors or the recruiting managers. And so it feels weird to talk about when I made a mistake in whatever, because it's not relevant to them. It's not relevant to what they're doing in the day-to-day. So then I get into this professor mode, which also, I mean, sometimes those posts go okay, but so I'm where to find the balance, and how do I sneak the story in when it's more professional?
So what story would you go for? What 3 keywords that you would go for when you're telling a story?
I can definitely talk about becoming my own journey of becoming. I want to help companies create influencers on LinkedIn. So I can talk about my own journey as an influencer for sure. There's a couple times that I'm able to talk about client stories, but it's not there's not that many of them, number one. And it's a little hard to get them sort of twisted around so that they're not recognizable.
So with stories, even if you think they might not relate to them, your client base, even I just mentioned how my story was weird. I had founders that are 20 years older than me being wow, thank you so much for sharing that. got like maybe a lead. I don't know if it's a lead or not from that. So even if we think they might not relate, because like, you know, you're failing and like you're here and they're there, that's how I feel oftentimes. But they're like, they want to see that because they either relate to it because they were there before, or they're even there now. We're always in the trenches.
So
Yeah.
so take that story of my own, feeling about not being good enough on LinkedIn and turn that around to, but now I'm feeling so good about it that I'm helping other clients do it. Like
Always start from your strength. So like Jasmine does this a lot. Like I am a multi-millionaire champion, I don't know, of the world, whatever. But it's like, it wasn't always like this. And then he tells the story in backwards, like reverse. So like he reverse engineers the process, which makes people interested, and then makes them relate, and then makes them admire him, because it's like clear that the path wasn't so clear, and you can do the same.
Yeah, tell the story backwards. That's really good.
Or start from the middle.
Right.
Like so all of them work. But yeah, those, I would love to see more from you. I think stories like that really do connect you with your audience that you didn't even realize you had. You'll get comments and you get messages of people that are like, thank you for this, I really needed to read this. Or your ideal client will be like, okay, I want to work with that type of person that's got such drive and such resilience to keep on going and doing what they do and actually tell their stories online.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna try it. Thank you.
You go, girl. Srivas.
Yeah, just correct me if I'm wrong. So in the storytelling post, right, you are just using the story as maybe like 10 to 20%, right? So for example, if you say like, I met Robert and here are the lessons that I learned, whatever follows that is more of an educational content, right?
So what is the what?
So if the example that you gave some time back, right? I met Robert and here are the lessons that I learned. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
And then the call to action, whatever. In the entire post, the story part is just like 10 to 20%, right? So technically not using a story, then just using one sentence.
So the reason why I do this, and it's not always as obvious as that's just like a draft, is because you're trying to make the story about them. And the way you create story about them is you give them something to learn or relate to. So if Sadia was telling how like the things she learned from influence, it's the things she learned. So she's still telling a story, but she's also educating at the same time, which is keeping her audience hooked onto what she's saying, because people feel like they're learning. People are way more likely to stay reading something if it feels somewhat beneficial to them, especially on LinkedIn. People are there to be educated because of the nature of the platform. So if you're able to mix in stories and education, you're gonna win. That's what I've seen with myself and clients, because the more you're able to give it to people, like what's in it for me, the higher retention and the more likely they are to come back because they're being entertained. Similar to like a YouTube video, you're being entertained by the YouTuber that's explaining something. Similar to a podcast, you're not a podcaster could be literally narrating a book like the Daily Stoic, but they're telling it in their own way, with jokes around and stuff. So that's the whole purpose, like turning like almost like a podcast version of a post.
So that in the storytelling post, the actual story is just 20%, right? Like I'm just giving random percent.
It's not 20%, it's not 50, it's just with the vibe. Like what's the vibe? Sometimes for me, it's like my self-awareness of like, how far do I want to take the story? It's more like, is every single line, I think I've mentioned in my copywriting session, like every single line should act as a hook. So is every single line hooking the audience? Like, does this make sense? Am I going from point A to B singularly every single time? It's not the percentage, it's how much you're how the relevance of the story. There's no specific number, like there's no specificity like Jasmine's storytelling framework, because that often gets confusing and sometimes you don't even know how to follow it. It's more like being self-aware enough of how much of the story you're telling is relevant to the one reading it.
Got it. Thank you.
Let's go. All right. Any more questions? No. Oh, Tom.
Two hands, just to make sure. So I have a question. It's kind of for the whole group, actually, because I was thinking of writing a story about joining the cohort, but I wanted to involve a few people from it. And I wanted to speak to being a bit overwhelmed by the people that were in the cohort when I started. So I don't know if it's too much to include, but being like a tiny little minnow when I popped in here, and then looking at some of the other people's profiles that joined at the same time as me, like Alana's, I was like, I'm not there even close. And then I wanted to kind of, so I wanted to highlight a few people from the cohort also. Like my idea was to highlight some people from the cohort that were really, really like high performers at the beginning, and then speak to me not really following the advice that Laura and Luke gave me enough because I was too distracted by the people in the cohort that were already doing what I wanted to do, and then tie it back to, but this is what really matters, and then show like my growth from where I was to where I am and not show numbers. So like tying it back to there. So I guess my question is quickly how to write that, and then who from the cohort would like to be involved in that post, because I don't want to just throw people in without their permission. I'd like to ask them, but yeah, that's kind of my question. I think it's a cool way to tie in other people from the cohort as well, instead of just highlighting Laura and Luke and like what they've taught.
Shout out Tom for joining and getting out of his comfort zone. Let's go. Yeah.
And then I'm
congrats.
gonna have to put a picture.
Yes. Go.
So I
like,
even thought about that. Like I gotta put the me in my media. So
you
that's
gotta
what
go
I'm
out
doing.
to a coffee shop and have someone following you, apparently. So you
Nobody
can
lives
do
in
that.
Kelowna. Come visit. Come visit in Kelowna. It's actually really nice here. You guys have no idea. I run a great
Uh,
coffee company.
I
I'm
love
from
that
Kelowna,
idea.
so
Yeah, but you're not
I know how
here.
nice it is.
Amazing. Well, hopefully, if you guys want to message Tom, I feel like anyone would like to be involved. You know, even I want to be involved, so involve me. But yeah, thank you so much for writing that. And I am actually sorry that you felt like that at the start. But if it helps, I felt like that at the start. I saw some of people like I remember chatting to Luke, and I was looking at you guys' profiles, and I was like, wow. Like I was like, I am the first impression I had, I was like, I'm so lucky to have this caliber of people in the cohort. And I was like overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God. But it's a feeling that we all get. So it wasn't just you. So, but I'm glad we're both here, still slaying.
Yeah, I think it was more the high level questions. It's like a professional athlete trying to get like an extra 0.2% in their sprint. And then there's me like, oh, my profile picture sucks. Like the level of like needs from the cohort in the beginning were very, very different.
What? Okay. Thank you, Tom. What do you want?
Just raising my hand like a proper guest. I have a question. Can I ask it?
I'm not sure I want to hear it.
It's a story. No, it's an actual serious storytelling question. So, like, for people that are struggling to get in the storytelling brain, how do you source your ideas? Like, can you talk about, like, say someone is struggling with, like, how do you tell a story? Like, where are you consuming story? Like, practical, like, hey, if you're a real logical brain, you're trying to get into storytelling, what should you go consume? Where can you start? That's not influence.
So if you know me, you know I never read a storytelling book. So the majority of my storytelling abilities have come from films. So I binge watch a lot of YouTube. Like YouTube is my religion. If you ask me what my favorite holiday is YouTube. So you'll find me watching YouTube videos because it helps me. Well, it doesn't help me, but it's helped me understand how to create something that's consumable quickly that people enjoy. So YouTube has been a great way for me to learn how people storytell differently and quickly, because YouTube videos are often 5 to 10 minutes. So that's how you get from the start to the middle to the bottom. The next thing is just take your favorite movie and see why do you like it so much? What emotion does it make you feel? Then that, for me, that's how I've learned how to write stories. And secondly, the swipe file. Swipe file has helped me the most because it literally tells you step by step. You might not outline it step specifically, but then you're like seeing how someone's breaking something down and you're seeing the results. Like if someone went viral with a story, then you're like, okay, that format is a proven format that I can follow. So again, back to Jasmine's storytelling thing, I don't always use it. I think I've used it once or twice, but I use parts of it, and that's what works for me, because I don't always want to go too deep. I always want to educate and help others, and maybe like put a platitude in there. So it's a lot of like taking everything that you learned in this copywriting, like in this whole personal branding cohort, and see what suits you. You don't have to use everything. You can use nothing. You can use one thing, and it's going to work as long as you're making sure you're following the basic principles, I think. Does that answer your question, Mr. Luke?
I'm satisfied with the answer.
Thank you. Alana.
I'm distracted by all of the emojis under Luke's most recent comment. I don't understand what's happening. There's like 75.
John just loves me.
Yes. So I wanted to throw out something that I've been experimenting with, because I tend to get very long-winded, as everybody knows, with my long-form writing. Is what I do with my ideas is I do the voice to text just in my phone to the iPhone notes, like what Laura was using. So it's kind of gobbledygook. Then I take it and throw it into Chat GPT with a framework, a proven framework that works, and give it very specific instructions to keep my tone. So I reverse engineer it. So it's my story, and then I tell it to clean it up, and it gets it to a point really quickly. It's been an interesting experiment, and I've had some pretty decent results that I've been able to then have something that's very close to done. And then I finish it with my own stuff. So it's really on my own. It's just I'm using ChatGPT as an editor.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? I love how you're using it in your own way. Like, you're not using Tweetmex, Romeokilohunter, Perplexity. You're using what you want to use to your advantage and what you're familiar with, which is the whole point. I love that. I might copy that.
Yeah, no, I got that, actually, I'm going to tell you, I got that from Ruben, my guy, my AI guy. He's my
Hell yeah.
personal assistant, AI
I love
assistant.
Ruben. I might
He's
get
great.
him on next time. Okay.
Yeah.
I love
Okay.
that. Well done, Alana. Thank you. And I love your stories, if that helps. So you're killing it with stories, always impressed. And I love your photos.
Appreciate it.
Right.
Appreciate it.
So I've been playing with that too, Alana. And just one thing I want to top up on that. One thing I found helpful is take 3 of your posts that you like, add them to your ChatGPT prompt, and say, write it like these. And then it'll automatically take your style. I found that really helpful.
Slay. Okay, Senya. Hi.
Hi, can you talk about Clio?
Cleo. Yeah, what's there to talk about? I don't know. I think it's quite.
You were talking about it in the last one.
All right. Yeah, let's give you guys a quick rundown through Clio, I guess. So I was one of the first people that got to beta test Clio. I was using it back in January. And basically it's a Google Chrome extension that you can use. It's made by one of our friends, Jake Wood. He's also a LinkedIn person. He's grown really quickly to almost 110K now. And basically what I do with Clio is I use it every single day, basically, like is my secret tool. And I'll go to Jasmine's content, for example, and I'll look for a keyword. So I'll go failure. And when I'm trying, let's say I often think about what I want to say and I use keywords. So I'm going to be like, okay, I want to write a post about failure. So I'll go to Jasmine usually, because he's like my idol. And I'll find a couple posts that perform well for him with the keyword failure. And I'll either see the hook, the structure, or like the overall theme. So what was the vibe? What was he saying? Can I write something similar? Because more oftentimes than not, I also have a blank page in my head that I don't know what to say. So when worse comes to worse, I have somewhere to start with. So like this one actually inspired my last post, because he was like, is everyone a bit too perfect on LinkedIn? Here's the behind the scenes. And then here it's like failure is something we don't talk about enough. And then I combined these 2 posts and I actually made my own post based on what he said, but it's completely different. So all I did was take inspiration in different keywords that he used, and I created mine. I think I used his like structure to write mine because I was late on writing this today. So that's what I did, and it works. You're not plagiarizing. You're literally just using someone else's content as a framework or a tool for your advantage. But if you see my post and his, they have absolutely nothing in common but the word failure. So that's how I smartly use Clio. And I love it. You guys should all download it. Yay. Thank you, Senya. Stephanie, do you have another question?
I did, and I've completely forgotten about it. So it's all good.
This is okay. You can message me. I wanted to touch back on the vulnerability piece. I hope I didn't discourage you from sharing your story. I just wanted to, because it's a personal branding thing. So it's all about perception. I don't want to discourage anyone to telling the story, but we have to remember how other people think and what their first impressions are, because they're really hard to change. So based on my personal experience, that's what I'm saying. But if you want to share your story on mental health, I 100% would love to hear it. Just make sure that you're okay with it being on the internet for a while.
Yeah, and thanks for acknowledging that. And I didn't take it that way at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to highlight this cold water immersion and the benefits. I don't even, yeah, I'm gonna find a way to do that, but it doesn't have to talk about, you know, my family's history of like mental health.
I think the best way to talk about mental health is always starting with either the benefit or like, I used to struggle with mental health issues, but today I'm a successful entrepreneur. Because there's in entrepreneurship, every single person struggles with mental health at some point. So it's something everybody relates to, but it's like coming in strong and how are you helping others to fix their mental health? So today I shared in my comments how I'm fighting seasonal depression, and I gave some actionable advice on like what I'm doing, like I'm going on a run, I'm like taking more sun, blah blah. So that helps people understand that I'm in their situation, but they also see me as someone that's consistently fixing it or like consistently doing something pro rather than negative. So that might help, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I've remembered my question, and it's short. So it's for Luke. Your AI, you created on one of the sessions.
Sorry, I muted you by accident. Sorry. I was clicking something else.
Hopefully you understood me by what my hand actions, but no. Luke, you had created an AI question framework to put it into ChatGPT, so it spits out what you're looking for. Are you able to put that in the group somewhere in the chat? Because I can't find it.
There's a couple of them that I've shared. Which one are you looking for? The Justin Welsh content matrix or the one that I shared in my post yesterday?
Oh God, no, it wasn't yesterday, although both would be great. What could I find them?
So the one is in my post yesterday. You can just copy paste that one. That's good to go.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Okay.
The Justin Welsh framework's also in my newsletter. So if you go to my profile, click on it and join it, you can see all the articles there that are hosted on a website, and there's one labeled the Justin Welsh content framework, and it breaks it down for you.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's also it is in Heartbeat. Lara put it somewhere, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Amazing. Alana?
This is just a housekeeping note because I keep seeing people from the cohort and everybody out there doing this, not always, but a lot. If you don't tag people in your comments, they do not get an alert on your comment. And if a thing has a lot of comments, they won't get an alert. It just gets buried. So if you really want somebody to see your comment, you need to tag them. It's just an FYI. That I didn't know if people knew that.
Yeah, it's also again it's also very good for recognition. People love seeing their name. So even if there's like you're killing two birds with one stone. So definitely always do it. Yeah. Thank you, Lana. That's really
Okay, sorry.
good. Thank you. I love that.
So like,
Should have
sorry,
said
I
that
guess
before.
a question on that question. I remove the last name all the time. Is that bad form? I feel like it's more personal. Like I don't
No,
put
that's fine.
okay
That's fine.
because I've just been doing it. I feel like it looks nicer.
Yeah, it does. It looks a lot cleaner, especially if the person has like 20 million names. I'm like, or emojis. I'm like, that looks weird. Cool. Well, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the storytelling lesson and apply the things that I taught you. Storytelling changed my life, so hopefully it also changes yours. I'll see you guys on Saturday for the last call. Bye.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Not ready for this to end.
Thanks,
Oh,
Laura.
thank you so much. I'll see you
Agree.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.